Hello, hello. This is Anya here on a lovely sunny day. Today, I am going to record something I'm a little bit nervous to talk about. Can I just be honest with you? Most of the time I sit down to record a video, I am nervous. I'm terrified of saying something wrong. I am terrified of giving the wrong impression and someone just jumping down my throat. What I'm going to try to start doing in all of my videos from this recording out is just put a little disclaimer up top. Here's the disclaimer. Today. This might get amended in the future. We'll see. We'll see how this goes, but here's what I'm working with right now. All the things you hear today are my own beliefs or how I choose and try to act in my life. I understand and recognize that this is not how everyone else thinks or believes, or it's not everyone else's experience, but this is how I choose to be and how I choose to act in my life as best as I can. So if you disagree, if you have other opinions, let's chat about it. Let's chat. I am very, very open to expanding ideas and talking through things and really engaging with people, but I am not into what society kind of has going on right now, which is just insult people, condescend to people, be rude, and as though that's a way to get a point across. I am so not into that. So if you have other ideas, other opinions, let's chat, but let's not be jerks about it, guys. Let's take steps towards creating a more positive way of engaging with each other. What I want to talk about today, something very important to me, and that is science versus faith. I am using the word faith here to sort of incorporate spirituality and religion and any sort of ideas like that, because that's sort of what it is, right? And faith, I think, is a good word to encompass all of those things, so that way I'm not picking and choosing sides and which one is the right one. From some of my other videos, you know that I am someone of some sort of faith. I am a solitary druid and very connected to that aspect of my spirituality. It means a lot to me, and it's helped empower me in a lot of different ways. But I'll also say science is also a very important part of my life. I am currently earning a master's of science at the moment, and I think science is very important to the world. It's very necessary, and it's an amazing tool that human beings can use to help understand and learn so much more. But currently, I feel like we live in a society that says you have to be one or the other, that you can't really be both, and they can't intermingle. And I disagree with that on a few levels. Maybe intermingle isn't the right word, because I certainly don't think that, we can run science just based on faith alone. But I certainly don't think you have to choose between being scientific and also being a person of faith. I think there is room for both, but for there to be room for both, we have to come to some understandings of what science is and what faith is. I'm going to start with science first. So science as a subject is very precise and it is data driven. It is driven by tests and retests and evidence. It is a constant looking at and proving of what we are finding, what we are understanding. Science starts with a hypothesis, an idea of what might be happening with whatever we're looking at. And this hypothesis is usually formed by understanding and looking at previous findings that we've come to understand to be true. So it is looking into this previous understanding, these previous studies, what we would call a literature search or a literature review, and digging into as many of those studies and findings as we can to sort of build upon our hypothesis of this new study and this new understanding. We also look at our hypothesis and figure out, how can we test this? What can we do in order to prove or test this hypothesis? That test will come in a myriad of ways. You have quantitative research, which a lot of times does things based on numbers and statistics, but then you have qualitative research, which is a lot more subjective and looking at people's individual experiences. But there's a whole slew of ways to be testing hypotheses, and scientists will determine what is the best way to go about doing this, so that way when they get results, they can be as sure as they can that their results do reflect the hypothesis one way or another. And that could either be that their hypothesis is true or that their hypothesis is not true. And in science, despite the fact science goes in this way and constantly does these tests and retests and looking at things over and over again, despite how precise and accurate and driven by evidence and data it is, a lot of times we also have to say in science that the findings suggest something. This is because science recognizes that there is always the possibility their sample isn't reflective of a whole population, or that perhaps the data they got back was incorrect. Say you have surveys that you are conducting with a greater population and you're getting as many people to fill out the surveys as you can. Well, unfortunately, you are going to have people who might try to skew that data by putting in false information. Science does try to account for this, and that's why it always, again, looks at the data, retests things to try to make sure it can keep up with the accuracy of what they're finding, and also to make sure that they can account for things like false information being put into data and surveys and findings. And actually, we can kind of see this at play almost every day right now in 2020 and 2021. Those of us who are living through the COVID-19 pandemic, and if you're watching this from the future, then, ask your parents about it. But we're seeing that on a daily basis. People are getting frustrated by how the findings keep changing, how advice keeps changing, what we're meant to do keeps changing. People are getting confused and frustrated, and I get it, but that is honestly science at work, because that means people are conducting more and more tests, more and more studies, more and more research is being done to find out more about this virus and how it affects people. Scientists keep doing these studies in order to keep finding out more and more, and that's why things keep changing. The more we study, the more we learn, the more our knowledge expands. And that's the importance of testing and retesting and constantly knowing more. We are seeing science in action, and yes, I can get it. It's super frustrating, but it is such a great thing that science can keep doing this, because through this testing and retesting, it allows us to understand the world a lot better. It allows us to answer questions of, how do we get sick? How do we catch viruses and then get sick? And how does our body fight it off? It can answer questions like, why does the sky appear blue and grass appear green? It can look at our oceans and study the creatures that live in it, from the biggest whale to the smallest bacteria. Science can do such amazing things with all of its precision and accuracy and need for data and evidence. And that's a big reason why we should love the fact that we have science, because it means that we can constantly expand our knowledge. And we're not limited to what we can know. We're only limited by the science that we have at the time. There's a constant need for looking at and understanding and proving things, and not just basing things off of an idea you had someday. Science can help us understand the human mind and the brain and all the different neurons and hormones that are constantly at play inside of our own heads, but through further studies in science, we can also understand the different impacts that social factors, cultural factors, and then even biological and evolutionary factors have on all of these things. Science can do so much for us, and plain and simply, we should marvel at all that science can do. But sometimes, as human beings, we have questions that maybe science can't always answer, and that comes in terms of things like our purpose, our meaning, the deeper interconnectedness of things in life. A lot of human beings are searching for answers like that, and that is such a subjective and personal thing that science can't really answer that, because it is about ourselves and our own individual connection to the world. And that, I think, is where faith comes in. And this is why I don't think that faith and science have to be at war or at odds with each other, because they're meant to do different things. One of the ways I sort of think about it is science looks out at the world and attempts to understand the world based on what it is seeing. So it's an outward looking at things, noticing a pattern or noticing something in the outside world, and then going inward in order to understand the greater issues and conflicts and mechanisms behind it. It is digging into all of that with preciseness and data, as I keep saying. Whereas faith, I think faith comes from a more internal place of looking for deeper meanings of life and why we're here. It starts internally, and it asks questions of, what are we doing? What am I doing? And then getting even deeper of like, how am I connected to this world, and what is the purpose of being here? How does my place here affect another person's place out there? So I feel like faith is sort of an inward starting thing, and then it goes outside to look at the world and find that connectedness. But it is not from the preciseness and testing of different ideas and proof of things. Faith comes in at a more personal level. Again, at least my understanding and how I work with my own personal faith. I am a firm believer in science and all that science can teach us, and I think it's important. But I'll also say my faith, my druidry, helped me feel more connected to myself and who I was, who I wanted to be, and empowered me to act on things that me in the past might have been too insecure and too nervous and anxious to do. That is what faith can do for a lot of people. It's helped me see that the life I live and the things that I choose to do both matter to me, but can also have a bigger effect on the world at large. The actions that I take on a daily basis can have little ripple effects all over the place. If I go outside and pick up trash and rubbish, that might just be me doing one good act, but it still has a benefit and value somewhere. That is something that people who are active in their faith might think about more often, the interconnectedness of things and their own individual sense of, how do I make an impact? And that can be empowering for some people. So that's why I think there's room for faith in this world too. And people who don't have a faith in, say, like a divinity, deity, spirit, God, goddess, source, anything like that, that's fine too. But I would imagine that there is something that might make you feel connected to others, make you feel a greater sense of something in your life, or not. You know, this is just my opinion of myself, how I view the world, how I work with both of these things separately, and how they work for me. And I understand that everyone's life, everyone's experience is gonna be a little bit different. That is what we are all bringing to this table, man. We're all bringing different experiences based on society that we grew up in, our cultures, our heritage, our family, our friends, our experiences in life. All of these things are contributing to different perceptions and perspectives on life. So if your way isn't my way, that's fine. We all just got to be honest with ourselves and who we are, and I think there is so much room for all of these things if we have a better understanding of their meaning and how they work. Faith itself doesn't have to be a faith in a deity, a divinity, a source, spirit, any of those words. It can be a faith in yourself, a faith to act on it, and that, again, is something that faith can bring to the table, and that's how it can help people in science as well. Perhaps, you, through your own faith or your own interest in following your own actions and beliefs in life, you start studying something and it makes you hypothesize that maybe this thing does have a relevance in the world. Right now in science, a lot of people are studying the science of mindfulness and meditation, and that actually does come from spiritual practices. So spirituality and science can co-intermingle in that sense. You can find something in spirituality that might have relevance to the world, such as mindfulness and meditation. There is a way that these things can co-mingle and integrate, but it shouldn't, in my opinion, it shouldn't be in a way that conflates the two. It shouldn't be in a way that says, I take my faith and I use that to explain the entire world around me. Because in that, you are always going to come across conflicts and issues, because faith doesn't have that proof and evidence behind it. Faith is more of a feeling, an important feeling, and a very valid feeling for many people. But the understanding of the greater parts of the world really does require that testing and retesting and evidence that science brings to the table. But there's equally other issues where I've seen people who treat science like a faith in and of itself. They sit there and insist that science has to be something that people just trust. You might not understand it, but you just have to trust it, and that's all there is to it. That's not the point of science. The point of science is to be able to prove something, and for people to be able to look at the proof, look at the evidence, look at the data, and really be able to understand what is being said there. And if we're just telling people to just rely on trust and faith, then you're ultimately making science about faith or even religion, and there's something not right about that either. Part of that issue might be that a lot of times science isn't always accessible to people on every wavelength and level. So that might mean we need to start figuring out ways to help people understand science more, make science and the findings of science something that every single person, no matter what their intellectual level, can understand. That's a really important facet of science that should be there and available for people, so that way we can ensure that science does what it's needing to do. Again, I'm going to repeat it because I've been repeating it this entire video, but the constant proving of things and showing how we have come to these conclusions and understandings. If science can keep presenting that in a way that makes it accessible to people, then it takes some of the mysticism out of it, and science can be exactly what it needs to be, the place of preciseness, precision, and a deeper understanding of the world as a whole, and people as well. While faith can also then become this personal space of inner development and wisdom. In my Dreams of Gaia Major Arcana chat in part 2, I talked about the knowledge and wisdom cards. That, to me, is sort of where I see this divide between science and faith in a very boiled down way. Knowledge is the reading of books, the studying of facts, the constant work to study and research and understand things. It's the reason why you're going to school for so many years, to understand the concepts of history, mathematics, language. That is knowledge, the constant building up in our brain of increased understanding. Wisdom is something a bit deeper than that. Wisdom, I keep pointing here at my chest because wisdom just feels like it's something that comes from within. It's an inner searching, an inner longing for understanding on a deeper level. It's not the building up of facts and data and research. A need in many people to understand themselves and the world beyond just knowledge. The tarot card that is associated with wisdom is seen as a lone figure with a lantern about to enter a cave. That, in and of itself, is sort of the idea of wisdom, the idea of being alone and getting comfortable with yourself to understand you and yourself and your needs and your own sense of meaning and purpose in life. Because many can argue that human beings are not here for a purpose, that there is no meaning to life. If that's your belief and you are happy and content with that, that's A-okay, totally A-okay, and again, you do you. But for a lot of people, they need that sense of meaning and purpose, and that's fine too. Wisdom and essentially faith is that inner looking for something greater and understanding within yourself and then applying it to outside. Again, not as a way to explain the world, but as a way to help people know how to interact with the world, how to connect with it, and how to live their own truth and meaning in the world. I hope in this video I have somehow made it clear how I see the differences between these two things, because they are two very different things, but that doesn't mean they have to be at war with one another. Someone can be of a scientific mind, but also have a sense of faith in their life as well. And vice versa. Is there a conclusion I need to make here? I don't know. I never know how to end these videos, and I never know how to start these videos, so I'm just gonna conclude it here by saying thanks for watching. Anya out. Bye!